वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतेरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। शृण्वता स्वतः कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्तो य भद्राणि विधनोति सुहृत्सताम्। Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 12, verses 6 to 9. So we'll first of all do the word-to-word translation, the verse Sanskrit word-to-word translation and purport for the sixth verse. And for the next three verses, we'll just do the translation. The verse. Sovadyataha sutairevam pratyakhyatanuशासनैः क्रोधं दुर्विषहं जातं नियन्तुमुपचक्रमे. Word-to-word translation. Saha, he, Brahma, avadhyataha, thus being disrespected, sutai, by the sons, evam, thus, pratyakhyata, refusing to obey, anushasane, the order of their father, krodam, anger, durvishaham, too much to be tolerated, jatam, thus generated, niyantum, to control, upachakrame, tried his best. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. On the refusal of the sons to obey the order of their father, there was much anger generated in the mind of Brahma, which he tried to control and not express. Purport. Brahma is the director in charge of the mode of passion of material nature. Therefore, it was natural for him to become angry on the refusal of his sons to obey his order. Although the Kumaras were right in such acts of refusal, Brahma, being absorbed in a mode of passion, could not check his passionate anger. He did not express it. However, because he knew that his sons were far enlightened in spiritual advancement, and thus he should not express his anger before them. Verse 7, translation. Although he tried to curb his anger, it came out from between his eyebrows, and a child mixed blue and red was immediately generated. Purport. The face of anger is the same, whether exhibited due to ignorance or knowledge. Although Brahma tried to curb his anger, he could not do so. Even though he is the supreme being, such anger in its true color came from between the eyebrows of Brahma as Rudra, in a mixed color of blue, ignorance, and red, passion, because anger is the product of passion and ignorance. Verse 8, translation. After his birth, he began to cry, O destiny maker, teacher of the universe, kindly designate my name and place. Verse 9, translation. The all-powerful Brahma was born from the lotus flower, pacified the boy with gentle words, accepting his request and said, Do not cry, I shall certainly do as you desire. Let's once read verse 6 translation and then we'll offer some prayers and then the discussion. On the refusal of the sons to obey the order of their father, there was much anger generated in the mind of Brahma, which he tried to control and not express. Hare Krishna, everyone. We'll offer some prayers and then discuss. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. have just a personal sharing and appreciation before we get into the discussion. I've heard this topic that the statement by many devotees that actually Bhagavata speaks so specifically and personally to the status and then the mental state that you're currently going through. And somehow this from last 2 weeks, my meditation has been something that I'm going to speak as part of this verse. And this verse, this sequence of verse was something that directly spoke to me on that level. And it was so kind of brilliant on seeing Lord Brahma kind of give me a solution that can kind of I can implement in my life when I go through this situation. So it was just brilliant. I think this is one of the first times I'm experiencing where like Srimad Bhagavatam kind of directly speaking to my personal problems. So I was able to relate to this words quite nicely. So, and it just so happened I was actually supposed to speak on a different day, and then the situation just so happened that I actually am today. I mean, not any other day. That when I was swapping the class, it was not any other day. It seems like it was perfectly planned for today, so that as I always say, like all these classes are much more important for me, because these preparation kind of is helping me much deeper to go deeper. And then today's class is kind of a classic example of Srimad Bhagavatam helping me through the preparation and then through the sharing, kind of making it more internal. So when I was kind of reading the translation and then the purport, I've been meditating, and one of the first few ideas that I got was this pastime in kind of in one level appears very linear. It's Lord Brahma started creation. There was a kind of, if we can call it, the dark elements that were created, which Srila Prabhupada translates them as nascent beings. And then Lord Brahma was not happy with it. He felt that was a sinful task that he was creating, which we were blessed to hear from Prabhupada Maharaj himself in the last week when he discussed about all of that. Those were brilliant classes. And once that happened, then he created the Chaturkumaras. They disregarded his instruction. He was angry, and then Rudra was born. So it kind of appears that why is Lord Brahma not able to understand Kumaras who are trying to do what is the highest goal of human life, which is the transcendental realization, and they're trying to do that. Why is Lord Brahma not able to understand? And it in some ways it might appear that Lord Brahma is kind of quote unquote a fallen materialistic person who is not able to understand. And then I was kind of contemplating on that. Is it all that is there to be there for Lord Brahma, where we are kind of is he to be blamed in this instance of the whole thing, that for him to become angry, is he all to be blamed? And then when I read the purport, and then also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport as part of that, then it clicked to me there is also one more, and as part of my preparation that I was going through, there's actually a couple of more. Before we get into the lessons that I want to discuss from this specific pastime of Lord Brahma being angry on Chaturkumaras, I would like to discuss two more pastimes and then draw parallels from all three pastimes. In some ways, all three pastimes are revolving around Lord Brahma and his sons. So you say that the interactions of Lord Brahma with his sons or the interactions of one son with the other son. So this is kind of the framework that we'll be discussing today. So the first pastime that we will be obviously we just discussed is Lord Brahma created Chaturkumaras who are his four sons, and they disregarded his instruction. He is angry. So that's like the first precursor of the pastime. And then the second pastime that I wanted to slightly touch upon, not go into detail because I already struggled with the time, so I don't want to get into the pastime in total detail, but slightly touch upon is Bhrigu Muni, when all the sages gather together to designate who is the supreme Lord between Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. Bhrigu Muni comes to Lord Brahma first, and in this case of that is happening with the Chaturkumaras, Bhrigu Muni is also his son. And when Bhrigu Muni comes to that place, to Satyaloka, to Lord Brahma's place, which is Prabhupada, describes is like a lotus. And when he comes there, and Lord Brahma sees that my son, which is happening here also, is disregarding him, either in this case, whether it could be disregarding his instruction or showing complete utmost disrespect towards him and not acknowledging his position as father and not showing his improper respect. And even in that case also, Lord Brahma becomes angry. But he did, like it happened in this case, he did not express it. And also in that case also, he did not express it. But the only difference that happens in between these two pastimes, where in the first pastime, in the case of 4 Kumaras, Rudra is created, which I was seeing it is in line with the whole process that is happening now, which is the creation. And in the subsequent verses, I think tomorrow and day after tomorrow, Srila Prabhupada beautifully describes what is the principle of Rudra. Is it just Rudra? What was the reason that Rudra was created, and how is he playing a predominant role in our lives as the principle of Rudra, principle of anger? Srila Prabhupada in the next few verses beautifully describes it, but I don't want to touch upon it. So in this case, in the first instance, Lord Brahma was able to control his anger, and the second time also he was able to control his anger. So he felt let down by his sons, and then he was able to control his anger in both the instances. And the other pastime that I wanted to kind of slightly touch upon is Daksha Prajapati feeling let down and disrespected by Narada Muni when he was doing the whole creation that happens. And then the pastime goes something like this: Daksha Prajapati is given by this, he is given this responsibility because he is the Prajapati. His task after birth is basically to create this progeny as a service to Lord Brahma, because he's also one of the sons of Lord Brahma. Is that, and then initially he begets 10,000 sons who are called as Haryashvas, and the first thing that they do, all these 10,000 sons, is they go to the forest and then they wanted to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead before they get into everything they wanted to do. And here comes Narada Muni, and Narada Muni, when he sees all these 10,000 sons of Daksha Prajapati so beautifully doing whatever they are doing, he becomes very elated, and it feels like I should share what I have in my heart. And then he transforms their heart, and then they never go back to Daksha Prajapati. But the first time Daksha Prajapati feels let down, he says, "It's okay. I'll do what I need to do." And this time he begets 1,000 sons who are called as Shavalasvas. And then Narada Muni again does the same thing. He again transforms their heart. And when it happens the second time, he just loses it. Whereas in the case of Lord Brahma, he was able to hold himself together. But in the case of Daksha Prajapati, he just loses it, everything. And it is described in Bhagavatam that the reason Narada Muni again goes back, it's not that Narada Muni runs away from thinking, "Oh, Daksha Prajapati is angry, I have to run away from him." But just to help Daksha Prajapati, this is like just a side note, just to help Daksha Prajapati, he goes and faces him so that he can express his whole heartfelt anger onto Narada Muni, and then become peaceful with himself so he can carry out his service. And then the result, so the contrast between, in the case of Lord Brahma, in both instances, and in the case of Daksha Prajapati, they were both angry. And in some ways, if we kind of see it from a hierarchical standpoint, we might feel that Lord Brahma's anger is much more justifiable than Daksha, because it's but natural that our own peers, in this case siblings, kind of being disregardful of what we are trying to do. That happens all the way. Like, I have 2 young boys, and I'm sure like all of us parents, we keep seeing that one sibling being disregardful of the other siblings' wishes or desires or the thing that they want to do. But in the case of Lord Brahma, this is much more hierarchical. He has a father. There's a specific thing that is being asked to do, and then his own sons were being either disrespectful or disregarding his own instruction. But somehow, I felt it was quite interesting that Lord Brahma still keeps it in his control. But whereas in the case of Daksha Prajapati, he completely loses and kind of is in kind of an entire chaos. And then what results is basically him becoming angry and then cursing Narada Muni. So, as I just described, if you look at it from an objective standpoint, Lord Brahma's anger might look more justifiable, but also Lord Daksha Prajapati's anger is also justifiable, which also Srila Prabhupada actually writes in this purport. If you see in the purport to the verse 6, Srila Prabhupada writes, therefore it was natural for him, which is referring to Lord Brahma, to become angry on the refusal of his sons to obey his order. All of us are parents. We kind of understand it. We want the whole concept of no parent, no yelling, and no shouting comes from um, this feel of, as a parent, you have that control on what the kids want to do, and because they're not being kind of doing what you want him to do, it shows up as anger, which is the same case that Lord Brahma is going through. There is a specific purpose that he has created all these four Kumaras so that they could help him in the further creation. He was especially coming from the place where he came of complete dejection, feeling so low of what he himself terms as sinful tasks that he did. And he gathered himself, and then he's in this place. And then the first thing that he is doing is somebody completely disregardful of what he's trying to achieve. And in that place, it is but natural for him to feel angry, which Srila Prabhupada also writes. And if you extend that logic also to Daksha Prajapati, it is but natural for him to feel let down and angry on Narada Muni, because all he was doing, it was not that Daksha Prajapati doesn't understand the importance of self-realization or any of that. He is Lord Brahma's son, he understands that, but there is a purpose for what he was doing. There's a purpose that why he was creating all these sons so they can kind of help him. He is a Prajapati, he needs to expand on the progeny. But when that situation was not working out, it is but natural for both Lord Brahma and Daksha Prajapati to be angry. And I'm sure all of us in some ways kind of can relate to this situation, which is it's kind of uh, was a place that I was, as I was describing, with kind of an emotional place that I was in a situation where kind of expanding that, not going into too much details. All of us, whether it could be in our professional places, whether we could be a teacher or working in an IT company, or we could be a professional working within the temple, or we could be within the temple as a voluntary service we are doing, or sometimes it could be just in the home. You're trying to do something, and some external factor, whether it could be our wives, our children, or god brothers or god sisters, or sometimes it could be just an external factor, which is not what you call a specific personality or per se, but it could be just an external factor, an entire situation that happens, which hinders what we are trying to do. And then the result of what we are trying to do is not what we feel we deserve, which is the case that happened with Lord Brahma and Daksha Prajapati. They didn't feel that they deserved being disregarded of their wish of continuing on their creation. It was not what they deserved. Because they were genuinely trying to help the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this creation. And in that case, in that state of being let down and feeling not deserving what the outcome is, what happens in our conditioned state, the natural result that happens is anger. And when it happens, the one contrasting difference is in the case of Lord Brahma, he was angry. And also in the case of Daksha Prajapati, he was also angry. But the result of both of their, the end result was entirely different. In one case, Daksha Prajapati was attributing the source of his anger on an external cause, which is Narada Muni. But in the case of Lord Brahma, he was not attributing to anybody. He was able to somehow gather himself and control it. And Srila Prabhupada, in both the purports of Lord Brahma, in the case of this pastime of Chatur Kumaras, and also the pastime that happens with the Bhrigumani, Srila Prabhupada actually, I mean, in fact, even Sukadev Goswami himself actually says in the verse that Lord Brahma was able to subdue it it as in the anger, by applying his intelligence. And Srila Prabhupada also to this verse, in the 6th verse, kind of doesn't use the word specifically the intelligence per se, but he kind of writes it in that level where he says he did not express it. However, because he knew that his sons were far enlightened in spiritual advancement, and thus he should not express his anger before them. So was the case with Daksha Prajapati. He knew internally that Lord Narada Muni was much more spiritually enlightened than him, but he was somehow not able to do that. So I was kind of curious to understand how is that intelligence. I mean, we have multiple definitions of intelligence. In Krishna like, sometimes describes intelligence like buddhi in a kind of slightly different way in Bhagavad Gita, and sometimes I was actually trying to kind of see what is intelligence. And like we always do, I went to Google, like how we go to the scriptures. I went to Google and tried to see what is intelligence. And interestingly, I actually found an article which says there are as many definitions for intelligence as many people who are ready to give the definition. So, unlike the other words in English, intelligence doesn't have a specific concrete this set definition per se. But one of the definition which is predominantly accepted is intelligent refers to a person's ability to learn, reason, and solve problems effectively. In the case of Lord Brahma, as we discussed earlier, for both Lord Brahma and Daksha Prajapati, it was natural for both of them to be let down by the members of their family, whether we call it as sons in the case of Lord Brahma or the brother in the case of Daksha Prajapati. But in the case of Lord Brahma, as we just discussed, in spite of all the external chaos that was going on, his previous bad experiences, the present disregard of everything that he was able to do, he was able to self-examine himself, go deeper into himself, which comes to the point, especially by slowing down his inner self-examining what is happening and why is it that I'm reacting in that way. He learned on the situation, he was able to learn about the situation and then have the dialogue, internal dialogue, reasoning himself, which we could also kind of term it as reflection, reflecting on himself. Okay, what is happening? Why is it that I'm kind of feeling the way I'm feeling? And once he felt that, then he was able to think of effective solution. But unfortunately, in the case of Daksha Prajapati, rather than self-examination, he actually lost the control that he had on himself, which somehow was able to kind of keep it together in the first case. But when it happened in the second time, he felt himself as the victim, which Yamuna Jivan Prabhu, in many of his classes, talks about the DDT triangle, Dead Drama triangle. He felt himself as victim. And in that state of feeling himself as victim, he saw Narada Muni as a perpetrator. And then the result was basically cursing Narada Muni. So what does it mean on a day-to-day level for us to actually apply this intelligence? And how was Narada Muni able to kind of slow down, reason himself, learn and then reason or reflect with himself and then solve the problems? And as I was thinking on kind of how to correlate that to our personal lives, I remember a quote that I quite long back, I remember hearing from my Guru Maharaj, Sri Radhanand Maharaj, where he says, what pleases Krishna in our in everything that we do is not just being right. What pleases Krishna is when we go beyond being right. In the case of Daksha Prajapati, all he was concerned in kind of not trying to present Daksha Prajapati as somebody who is demoniac, but just for our sake to kind of understand the contrast between Daksha Prajapati and Lord Brahma. In the case of Daksha Prajapati, all he was concerned was, as we just discussed, he was in that state of feeling victimized, where he was thinking that I'm doing the best that I can to help my father in his creation. But this Narada Muni is causing disturbance. He is not helping in the creation for my father. And when I'm trying to do that, he's all but just causing disturbance. And this principle of feeling let down and then feeling of mentality we see in multiple pastimes across Bhagavatam. And one of the classic example is basically when Shringi, when Samika Rishi was disrespected by Parikshit Maharaj, what Parikshit Maharaj was done was not at all ideal, which Srila Prabhupada also writes so much in the first canto. What Parikshit Maharaj did was not at all ideal. He was in, just because he is the king of the entire world, it did not give him a right to do what he did. But even when it happened, whatever Shringi did of cursing actually Parikshit Maharaj, Samika Rishi, who himself was actually the receiver, if you kind of see it from the triangle level, Samika Rishi should ideally be the person who should have the feel of being victimized. But Samika Rishi himself did not accept or approve of Shringi's curse, because Samika Rishi understood the importance of going beyond right, because he understood the position of Parikshit Maharaj, and then the importance, and then the role that he was playing in kind of establishing dharma across. He understood what it means of going beyond right. Should he just stop? Should the buck stop at that place of that? I, as a in the social custom order, I, as a Brahman, am much more highly positioned than Parikshit Maharaj, who is just a Kshatriya. Should he stop it at that level or go further beyond it and then see it from the Krishna standpoint and seeing that what pleases Krishna of going beyond right is what helped Samika Rishi to gather himself. And in the case of Lord Brahma, is, as Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport, is he realized that his sons were far enlightened in spiritual advancement, and from that position they are right in their place to kind of disregard what Lord Brahma is asking them to do. But whereas in the case of Daksha Prajapati, he was not able to kind of reason himself, reflect on him, and then for him he stopped at that level that what I'm doing is right, because what I'm when in this when we are stuck at that level of being right and wrong, if it is natural for us to think that what I'm doing is right, because unless we feel what I'm doing is right, we'll never take that actual step of doing it. And because I am right, then it means the other person is wrong. But in the transcendental realm, as we understand from Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas, there is right, and there is more right, and then there is more right. It is not just on the right or wrong. And once we understand that, and as Srila Rompad Maharaj also was explaining on in the last weekend, I'll because we're almost ending, I'll just finish with this point. Is Srila Rompad Maharaj was also explaining it during the last weekend. Our reflections or our interactions with each other are basically a reflection of our character, as he was basically talking about building character and all of that. And in this case of all the basically the stories and then the pastimes that we see, we can clearly see the distinction in the character of each personality. There is a reason that we praise Samika Rishi but not praise Shringi. There is a reason that we worship, praise Lord Brahma with whatever frailties or apparent issues or anything that he has. There is a reason that we praise him but not praise Daksha Prajapati in spite of his humongous service that he does. We don't praise him as much is because of it's not just because of the task that they are performing. It's entirely because of the character which comes out so beautifully in all these pastimes that we're discussing. And as Srila Rompad Maharaj explained, character comes from purity, and then purity he attributed comes from vidya or knowledge. And it would be foolish from my side to think that Brahma had access to Vidya, but Daksha Prajapati didn't have access to Vidya. Samika Rishi had access to Vidya, but Samika Rishi never gave Shringi the Vidya. It was not, Shringi, the reason that Shringi was able to do what he did of cursing Parikshit Maharaj shows that he had access to that knowledge or Vidya. But the concept of Vidya or knowledge that we are talking is slightly in a different level of understanding of this terminology of understanding Vidya from the perspective of Krishna of going beyond right, and that kind of comes in this line of, we also see that there would be days where, like Lord Brahma happened in that case of when it happened in the Brahma only, we will also have the days where we might blink and there could be something that the reaction that we want to give would be something which is not ideal, which happened in the case of Lord Brahma. It's not that the moment Bhrugumuni came, disrespected him, or when Chatur Kumaras came and disregarded his instruction, it's not that he was happy, smiling, like it happened I think that happened, that whole thing of not having entire any emotion might happen only in the case of Lord Ramachandra, where when he first heard that he has to go to the forest, it was not that he was angry, but he was controlling it. We are not Lord Ramachandra. We can kind of correlate ourselves to much more of that Lord Brahma, where he felt let down. We also feel let down. We might become angry, but he was able to kind of self-introspect himself, slow down, and then through that he was able to kind of gather himself and then think of effective problem solution. And sometimes, which as we are discussing, it might happen in the case of Brahma Vimoha Leela, we might blink. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually writes in the purport to these words, he says that as Vidya destroys avidya, Vidya as in knowledge destroys avidya, which is ignorance, sometimes avidya can also destroy Vidya. This might be a kind of controversial or a kind of slightly expanding on it when we say avidya destroying Vidya, which happened in the case of Brahmavi Mohalila. When he kind of blinked, when he went into that ignorant place, it's not that he forgot everything, but for that moment, his avidya destroyed his Vidya, which kind of, for our understanding, which means it covers up our access to Vidya, which is beautifully explained in the pastime of Madhu and Kaitava. The reason Madhu and Kaitava were able to kind of grab the Veda, it's not that Vedas were a physical being from Lord Brahma. They were able to kind of grab the Vedas from him was because they actually covered him with the mode of ignorance. And once Lord Brahma was covered with the mode, because they were the personalities of mode of ignorance and passion, Madhu and Kaitava, then they covered Lord Brahma with the mode of ignorance. And once he was in the mode of ignorance, then he lost access to Vedas, which means the connection that he had there, the avidya, which is in the case of the mode of ignorance, kind of destroyed his vidya. That connection is destroyed. And all of these pastimes, which I kind of keep repeating in some ways in many of the discussions that we have, is not to kind of get us into this space of, oh, if Lord Brahma if he blinks, if he loses his access to Vidya, then he's creating all these blunders or issues or creating Grudra, anger, all of that. Does it mean, is it kind of basically to invoke fear? My understanding is basically none of these pastimes is basically to invoke fear, but to give us hope that yes, we will falter, we will have those bad days, but we have the example of Narada Muni, we have the example of Lord Brahma, who is the predominant acharya for our sampradaya. We will have those days where things are not going to according to our plan. We'll have somebody who is supposed to be helping us in our services, disregarding completely what we are trying to do. But even in those days, these pastimes will help us keep our guards open to expose ourselves as much as possible to Vidya, kind of slowing down internally and then going deep into those aspects of Vidya that we are so blessed to have from Srila, like having access to all these classes by various teachers that we have, Prabhupada himself in this Bhaktivedanta purports, and the access that we have from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami and like Rupa Goswami, all these wonderful acharyas that we have, going deep into those places where we can kind of establish that connection to Vidya, which in turn help us kind of develop much further better characters, as Prabhupada Maharaj says. And as we work on developing much better characters, it can ideally become possible because of our connection, always that establishing that connection with Vidya. And I'm sorry I kind of went beyond 4 points. I'll just end with this. Is in some ways, which I was also discussing with some devotees yesterday after Prabhupada Maharaj's class in Govindamoni Mataji's home, is we are all blessed beyond limit that we have this grace of hearing from so many devotees. Like I'm not sure if all the communities across world have this distinction of the whole month able to hear classes from various devotees. It's a blessing beyond limit that we have, not just from, because we get to hear various perspectives and then the access to Vidya. And then on top of it, we are blessed that Prabhupada Maharaj comes quite regularly here, does whatever he does with all the classes that he gives, and then we have our own personalities that we kind of connect to, relate to, and then our own spiritual masters where we hear, and so many. So it's the access that we have kind of. I hope that someday I kind of it's an you moment by moment choice where I kind of take this chance quite seriously and be immersed more and more in this aspect of hearing, as because Rupert Maharaj was also explaining. Hearing is, once you're able to perfect the process of hearing, everything follows, because hearing is the position, is the process that kind of helps us connect ourselves to Vidya. And once we have Vidya, then we have the purity, and once we have the purity, then comes the character, and once you have the character, like in the case of Lord Brahma, we can always be in that phase of self-reflection, slowing down ourselves, and then always be and do what Krishna feels is right, and not just what we feel is right, which is basically going beyond right. And I'd like to end at that point. And I seek all of your blessings. And if there are any corrections or comments or chastisement, the floor is open. Hare Krishna. But before that, before we get, I'd like to thank Varsana Mataji, because there was something that we discussed after my previous discussion, and that enormously helped me in preparing. So thank you, Varsana Mataji. If there are nothing, then Lakshmi Katru, can we end?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srupad. Thank you, Prabhu, for discussing topic in detail. I can relate to what you were saying. Being a parent, it's sometimes a lot of things doesn't go, or especially my two boys. They always want to do a lot of things, and sometimes being working in a chemical plant, we are taught a lot of safety. When biking, you must wear helmet and shoes, but they never want to wear helmet and never want to wear shoes, and they get hurt, and then 5 stitches next day, kind of thing. So thank you, Prabhu, for sharing your experience as well and your realization.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I
Krishna.
was thinking, you kept making this point, it was natural for both of them to get angry. And I was thinking, I wonder, I have read those pastimes, but I don't remember what specifically was spoken in those purports. I was thinking, the discussion made me think I should go back and kind of check out those pastimes, the purports again. But another thought that came to me was, you said Daksha Prajapati spoke, but like Brahma did not act on that anger. And for a moment, I was thinking, we react in few different layers. Like, for example, that same story of Bhrigu, you could see how, in case of Bhrigu, he disrespected at a mental level, with Brahma, with the verbal level with Lord Shiva, and physical level with Lord Vishnu. So just like, he expressed disrespect in those 3 levels, our reaction to situation can also be at those 3 levels. So in Daksha's case with Narada, it was at a verbal level. So it was a bit more gross than Brahma. Brahma's case, it was a bit more subtler, the consciousness. And therefore, there is, and of course, we can say behind all of this is the Lord's plan. So, of the Trinity, so to speak. But then I was also thinking about it from a different angle, the consciousness. For example, at the time of conception, and so similarly, Brahma was creating, and therefore his consciousness, the personality that came out was Lord Shiva. So just wanted to add that also to this potpourri.
That's also right. Like in Daksha Prajapati's case, and I one way that I kind of also looked at was there is a reason why Bhrigu Muni didn't want to act on the physical level with Lord Brahma, but there is a reason why he chose what he chose of acting with Lord Brahma in the mental level, and then with Lord Shiva on the physical level, like verbal level, and with Lord Vishnu on the physical level. That also shows the level of elevation of each of these personalities. Lord Shiva is in some ways much more spiritually enlightened than Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu is kind of entirely in a transcendental realm. So I was seeing it that from that level, but yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. But I was just trying to draw parallels on how they physically reacted on this level. So that's something I'll have to think more. Anything else, or we can end? Lakshmikant?
I was on and off, Prabhu. Thank you so much. I mean, for the comparing those Brahma's sons. So, I mean, my point is going again back to the yesterday also. I don't know. I mean, if you, many of you are there, we were discussing about um, Brahma is being obedient for the obedient to the Lord, and then here Kumaras are, I mean, not obedient to the Brahma. Right, so but both are being praised. So Brahma is actually obedient, but he's also doesn't, I mean, it's not a appreciable service, right, what he's,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know, that's what I was keep thinking about it. I know, so but here in this case, I mean, the acharyas taken a position because they are elevated souls, or they wanted to, I'm sure Brahma also would have done that. But Brahma is obedient, he is doing his service. So
Yeah, he was asked to do something, so he was.
but Kumaras also being created to do that service, but they disobeyed it. So right, so
Yeah, like
yeah.
if we can extend that logic also to Narada Muni too, like, but I think in some ways the Supreme Lord just didn't wanted everybody to be like Daksha Prajapati, who kind of can create that progeny, but then he also needs people like Narada Muni and Chatur Kumaras to kind of, once the progeny is created, there should be somebody who can actually lead that way, and but that
I
logic
mean,
could be
plan of the
it
Lord
could be,
comes into, I mean, yeah, plan of the Lord or will of the Lord, right? So that comes into the
yeah, like
thing. So,
that logic could be extended and saying that, oh, Chatur Kumaras and Narada Muni could have married and then also did what they did, but they chose to do certain things the way they did.
okay, bro, thank you. I'll end.
Yeah. Thank you, bro. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo